Hi everyone, Stjepan here. I'm going to continue covering my tournament games. So after the European Amateur Championship finished, I was finally happy. Again, after 2 months after the Pula Open, and we had a couple of league rounds to play. Now the league situation is very specific because we were last on the leaderboard and we were basically struggling to stay in the league. It works the same as in football. The last team or the last two go down to the lower league, so the fourth league, and the best to advance. So we had to fight to make sure we don't finish in the lower league. And we were facing a tricky team. Now, I ended up playing an opponent lower rated than me, but they have two strong players. One of them is 2250. The other one is 2000 something, but strong and a very tricky opponent. There was a third option as well. The third player I was preparing for was about 2000, and I spent 2 weeks preparing for those three opponents, trying to find some weaknesses in their games, and I did manage to do so for each of them. And basically, the league is played on 6 boards, so we needed 3.5 points to win the match. The rest of my team was lower rated on all boards, or should have been lower rated, and they ended up bringing their B team, sort of. So they were lower rated on almost every board. On boards 5 and 6, they brought 1,1500 rated players, so I was expecting us to win. And before the match, I'm the team captain, so I told them just don't accept draws. If the situation in the match is sort of tied, then you have to play for a win. So we had to win, and we started the game. I played d4. I had no idea whatsoever what my opponent plays because I've never heard of him. I did hear of him, but I never prepared for him, so I had no idea what he plays. He played knight f6, and as you may have noticed in the European Championships, I started playing d4, c4. Now, of course, I am prepared for the Benoni, the King's-Indian, the Grunfeld, the Budapest, whatever. But my opponent played e6 and went into the Nimzo-Indian, which I was happy to see because I'm very comfortable playing queen c2. I only played it once, and I won against a 2200 rated player in the previous tournament. In that game, my opponent played castles, which is the main move here. Mr. Vidic played c5, which is okay. I think it's the third most common move. Now I took, here, there are a couple of moves. He took with the bishop. That's not the trickiest option. If I'm black here, I play castles or knight a6, maybe queen c7. But yeah, bishop takes isn't as tricky. Knight f3, he played knight c6. You can also play queen b6 here. And in this position, the main move for white, I simply don't like. The main move is bishop g5. The idea is to get the bishop outside of the pawn chain before e3. But now after h6, bishop h4, queen a5, you get a ton of pressure on your c3 knight, and the positions are of course playable for white, and everything is fine, but e4 is weak, c3 is weak. I don't like these positions. So I played e3, which is what I've been preparing for these positions for a long time. And my opponent castled, and the idea is your bishop is not stuck. You're going to play a3, b4. Now, there's only one way to punish e3, and that's to play d5 here. Now, after b4, the bishop doesn't drop back to b6. It goes to d6, and after bishop b2, the key move is a5, weakening white structure on the queen side. After b5, knight e5, and the position should be very close to equal. But after a3, my opponent played a6, which now gives me a free hand. And at this point, white should have a very comfortable position, and I knew that. So I played bishop d3. I could have also played b4 first. Doesn't really matter. Again, d5 is the move that should be played, and after the game my opponent said, I just decided not to play d5 this game. That's fine if you want to play a sort of hedgehog position with the knight on c6. That, I don't know, he should have played d5. He played d6. I played b4, bishop a7, and bishop to b2. Now obviously all of my pieces are perfect, all of his pieces stand sort of poorly. His only good piece is the knight on f6, which he played rook e8 here. I can chase it away immediately. Now, I didn't find the best move here. I ended up castling, which is of course good, and white should be better, but g4 is actually very hard to meet. Of course, if knight g4, then bishop h7, and white should be winning this position after castles queenside. If h6, then simply rook g1, and again, I think the engine says something like +4 here. So g6 makes sense, I guess, but now there's g5, and the idea is that after knight h5, I'm going to go knight e4, knight g3, trade off the knight. This is very similar to something that happens in the Pirc, and once you trade off the knight, you can play h4, h5. So g4 is undoubtedly the best idea, and probably already on a high level a definite win for white. I ended up castling because I didn't want to risk too much, and I thought I had a position which was good enough to win regardless, so I just didn't want to risk. Obviously the bishop is bad, this bishop is bad as well, even though it may seem nice, and my plan is clear. I want to double my rooks on the d file, play c5 and weaken d6, or d6 has already been weakened, but I just need to target it. He played knight e7, rook ad1, queen c7 and knight e2. Now again I missed I missed a move which should have given me a winning advantage according to the engine, and that's c5. I didn't even consider c5. In the previous position I did consider g4, but here I didn't consider c5. The point is, if takes, I go knight e4, and if knight e4, then bishop e5, and this should be huge. Obviously if knight d6, then I can take on h7 and take here. So this should be winning according to the engine. I decided to transfer my knight to g3, which is good, makes perfect sense. So knight e2, white should still be better. Knight g6 and knight to g3. This is actually imprecise. Now, of course, the idea is to take on f6 and eventually weaken the squares around the black king. And my opponent allowed it on the next move after knight g3, which makes it even worse. But I should have played it straight away, because after knight g3, my move, he had the option to play e5. Of course, this is a bad position for black, because there's a hole on d5 and the backwards weak pawn on d6. I have the e4 square, I have the f5 square, I have h4, h5. This is better for white, but it was a chance to hold. After knight g6, if I take straight away, the game should be over, because after gf6 I just go rook d2, and there will be no sensible way to defend everything. c5 is coming and the position just falls apart. But after knight g3 he played bishop d7, and now it works beautifully. Now it's just... I thought that after bishop takes f6 my opponent would resign. He didn't, he took, and I played what I thought was the best move, but again I missed a direct win. So there are two options. You can play knight e4 or you can play knight h5. I didn't see the whole continuation after knight h5, so I didn't play it. After knight h5, the engine says f5 is the best move, giving up the exchange, but what I was afraid of is queen d8, which is the human move. And now the point is that I go c5, and this I saw, but I couldn't see what to do against bishop b8. Of course, if this is taken, then white wins on the spot. Bishop takes, pawn takes, and rook takes d7, if queen takes knight f6. But I couldn't see what to do against bishop d8, so I guess I take, bishop takes, and now this is what I saw in the analysis, that I can take on g6, and after g6 I play rook takes d6, and after pawn takes pawn, just rook f to d1, and he can unpin by attacking my queen, but after queen b2 it's all over. This, I think the engine announces mate here. So I couldn't see what to do against bishop b8, so I ended up playing knight e4, which is still okay. White is still much better. He played king g7, defending the pawn on f6, and now a simple tactic, knight takes d6. If this is taken, then bishop g6 wins, so he played rook g8. I played bishop g6 anyway, because I didn't want any pressure on the g file with the bishop coming to c6. Apparently a more precise way to play is bishop e4, but thought this was good enough, and it is. Takes, h takes, doubling my rooks. He played e5, rook fd1, bishop e6, and now queen e4. Queen e4 not to take on b7, but to activate my pieces, and I want sometimes to play knight takes e5 and checkmate my opponent. He played rook a b8, defending the pawn, which I guess is okay. c5. Okay. After c5, I'm looking at this bishop, and a key positional point is that b6 can never be played. If b6 is played, I get the d7 square for my rooks, and knight f7 is hanging. If this is hard to understand, you can imagine that the bishop is overworked. So my opponent did play b6 here, and I played c6 instantly. Of course, I'm threatening knight takes f7 in many positions, because if bishop takes, I have rook d7. If queen takes, I have rook d7. I should have spent some more time here and actually taken on e5, because it's even more winning. This has to be taken, and now after queen takes, if king f8, I can just play knight f5, and this is mate if the queen is taken. So the knight covers all of these squares. That's not hard to see. And if king h7, then I simply go rook d4, and this is going to lead to mate very soon. To be honest, I couldn't see what to do after king h7. I saw rook d4, but I couldn't see the mate. So I was thinking rook g7 here, and I thought rook h4, but I'm correct that there's no win here. This is what I saw. The correct move is queen g5, which for me, I didn't see it. And when I was analyzing the game, I found this with the engine, and I still couldn't understand it. But the point is, if f6 is played, then rook h4 check, and after king g8 I take here, and after rook h7, I don't take here, I play queen h6, and after rook h7 I can just take here and then take everything and have a winning endgame because of c6. No, I didn't see this. I think in this position, seeing the final position with c6 is very hard. So I just played c6 straight away, which I couldn't see a way for him to defend. He played b5, opening up his bishop, and now I spent a long time looking at knight f7, of course. And that is the best move. But I decided to get another attacker into play, which it turns out is a huge mistake. And this position, which is +7, actually drops all the way to equal after my move. And it's simple to see why. So if I take on f7, the game should be over. Queen f7, rook d7, bishop d7, rook d7, queen d7, c d7, and black should resign. This pawn is going to queen eventually, and my position is just perfect. Also, I'm threatening knight h4. If bishop takes f7, then simply rook d7, and again the same thing. The bishop is overworked. I'm gonna play knight h4. I'm gonna play the other rook to d6. I'm gonna play queen to d5, and the position collapses. What I played in the game is a mistake. I played knight h4. And it's not completely equal, but it's like +1, not +7, according to the engine. The reason for that is simple. My opponent just plays rook to d8. And after rook to d8, I don't have rook d7. After rook d8, I don't have knight f7. In my mind, which was a complete mistake, I still could have taken. Because if bishop takes, I can play rook d7. I don't know why I thought that was possible. And here, and I thought I had pressure on g6. Obviously, there is no pressure on g6. I just gave up a piece for no reason. My opponent has the bishop pair and should be winning here. So, I'm sort of lucky he didn't play rook d8, because I may have gone for this anyway. It was a blind spot. For some reason, I imagined another attacker on d7, and I thought the bishop would still be pinned. Luckily for me, my opponent played rook h8, and now it's just winning. Now knight f7 is twice as strong, and now takes. If bishop takes, then rook d7 and rook h4, queen h4, the bishop is collapsing. If queen takes c6, then rook takes a7, and the other rook is coming, and it's going to be mate very soon. And if rook takes h4, then queen takes h4 and bishop f7. I can play rook d6, and once the queen defends, I can play rook d7 and the other rook to d6, and the f6 square is going to cave in. My opponent played a move which I've refuted before playing knight takes f7. He played f5. Obviously, I don't want to go into the endgame with queen takes e5 because he ends up taking on h4. I do win the bishop on a7, but it's not that simple. So takes, check. And here, I don't know, here. Yeah, I probably just lose because I don't have a check. Yeah, so the endgame I didn't even consider seriously. After f5, there's a simple winning move, knight g5, and the game is over. If he takes my queen, I can take, and this is a winning endgame. Of course, we actually got something very similar in the game. He played king f6, I played knight e6, he took on e4, I took, and we actually got the exact same position. And now, I don't know if there are many ways to win, but I wanted to trade my knight and my c-pawn for one of his rooks, and that's what happened. Rook d6 check, king f5, knight d5. The threat of c7 and knight e7 check is unstoppable. So c7, rook b8, c8 queen. And yeah, now the game is over. I played g3 just to make sure I don't get mated. Rook g7, king g2, and here my opponent resigned. Yeah, we shouldn't be discussing this, but I made several tactical mistakes. Unfortunately, the first one, which isn't tactical, is not playing g4, which I did see, so I don't have any excuse. I just wanted to play it safe. The second one is in this position I didn't play c5, which would have given me a great advantage. So if takes, then knight e4. And this, I think, is the worst of all, not playing knight h5, ending the game on the spot. You could say I was lazy because I thought knight e4 was winning enough. That's a problem I often have. I actually had a lesson with my coach yesterday, and we discussed this problem specifically at one point. When I see a continuation, I don't look for alternatives if I think the continuation I saw is winning. And I actually blundered into a draw in a rook endgame 5 games ago because of that. There were 3 ways to win, or 2 ways to win and 1 way to draw, and I chose the way to draw because that's the only thing I was looking at. And finally, yeah, what could have led the game into a draw is playing knight h4. I saw knight f7, I was looking at knight f7, I didn't play it, I decided to bring another piece into play, which, when you talk about dynamic attacking positions, it's either the best thing to do or it's a blunder because the time is now. And in this case, the time is now because rook d8 is coming. So knight h4 is just a blunder. And a stronger player would have gotten away with it. So for example, knight h4, rook d8, I have to defend my pawn now. So queen c2, for example, bishop b8, maybe e4. I mean, if you turn on the engine, it says plus 0.4, so almost dead even. I mean, I'd still rather be white because I have this great knight and I have a pawn on c6, but it's no longer clear how I should be winning this position. Maybe I have some rook f3 stuff with knight f5. That's surely what I would have been looking at. But yeah, fortunately my opponent didn't play rook d8 and I ended up winning easily a move later. So, as far as the match goes, unfortunately, I was the only one who won. We had 2 draws and 3 losses apart from my game, so it was a disaster. And we are not going to be playing in the 3rd league next season. We still had some mathematical chances after this round. And tomorrow I'm going to show you the game we played in round 8, which was the last chance to do something. That I'm going to show you tomorrow, but we only had mathematical chances after this loss, not realistic ones. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked the game. I'm happy not to be playing either e4 or the London anymore. I find d4, c4 positions very pleasant. I think they suit me well. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.